Hello everyone and welcome back to Through Africa. It is still me, your host, Mercy Bamgbala, and today we are joining you again live from our studios here in Ankara, Turkey, to talk about Africa and everything that relates to it. On this show, we talk about education, politics, the health of the country, agriculture, education, and a lot more. Now, today we'll be talking about the relationship between Turkey and Africa. We know that this relationship has been one that has stood for a long time, and we'll be focusing mainly on the trade and the bilateral relations between these two countries. We have one country and a continent. Now, to talk more about this topic, I'll be speaking with two very important guests, Assistant Professor Burak Nedim Aktash, who's joining us from Beykoz University, and Associate Professor Abdullah Altun from Gebze Technical University. Hello, Mr. Abdullah and Mr. Burak.
Hello.
It is great to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
All right, I'll just start directly with Assistant Professor Burak. How would you describe, the current relations trade relations actually, between Turkey and Africa? We know that Africa is a continent and then Turkey stands as a country in the Middle East. What is the current state of trade between these two entities in general?
Right. Okay, thanks for having us. First of all, when we talk about Turkey-Africa relations, the first thing to highlight is how much this relationship has grown in the last 2 decades, actually. In the early 2000s, Turkey's trade volume with Africa was only around $5 billion, but today that number has exceeded $40 billion. So it is still rising, and that shows a clear and strong commitment from both Turkey and African countries to build long-term economic partnerships. Let's talk about the reasons behind it. One of the biggest reasons for this growth is Turkey's strategic expansion into Africa's trade and investment landscape. Turkey has positioned itself as a key player in Africa's infrastructure development, manufacturing, energy, as well as digital transformation. Also, Turkish companies are active in many African countries, that just in major cities, but also not in major cities, but also in developing regions. For example, let's take the example of construction sector. Turkey is among the top players in Africa in construction. I personally have already been to a couple countries in Africa for construction projects, and I can tell that the sector is very promising, and there are extensive opportunities in construction. If you travel across the continent, you will find Turkish companies building airports, highways, bridges, even entire residential areas. Take an example of international airport in Senegal or the international free trade zone in Djibouti. These projects are not just about business, they directly contribute also to Africa's economic welfare, growth, connectivity. Another key area we must mention is manufacturing and industrial investment. Turkish businesses are setting up factories, production facilities in African countries, creating thousands of jobs. In Ethiopia, for instance, Turkish textile firms have invested heavily in Ethiopia, making Turkey one of the biggest foreign investors in the country's textile sector. Beyond construction and manufacturing, Turkey is also taking role in agriculture, energy, technology. With Africa's vast natural resources and Turkey's expertise in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy, there is a huge opportunities for collaboration in these areas as well.
Sorry to cut you there. I'll give you time to continue. You just mentioned natural resources, and I think this is a very important point because we know that in Turkey as a country, there are a lot of natural resources in this country. And then when we look at Africa too, Africa has a lot of natural resources, but unfortunately, they are not being, maximized to its full potential. So I do agree with you at that point that, in strengthening this relationship, not the use of the correct use, I would say, of natural natural resources is very, very important. So you can go on there, Mr. Burak.
Exactly. Yeah, you exactly right. And Turkish companies are already investing in these areas in the African countries, working, for example, on solar and wind energy projects in countries like Sudan, Ghana, helping to provide a clean and sustainable power to local communities. Apart from direct trade and investment, Turkey has also recently focused on strengthening its diplomatic and business connections in Africa. Back in 2002, Turkey only had 12 embassies in Africa. Today, as long as I know that, the number has grown to 44 embassies across the continent. So this diplomatic expansion has made it easier for business to connect, trade agreements to be signed, and investment opportunities to be explored. Here we should talk about also Turkey-Africa Business and Economic Forum. That is one of the best examples of this diplomatic and economic engagement. This event brings together business leaders, policymakers, investors from both sides, and they have opportunity to discuss trade opportunities and the partnerships. This type of forums have helped facilitate many successful business deals over the years. Of course, despite this progress, there are still challenges that we need to address, dear Mercy. One of them is...
Yes, Mr. Burak, sorry to also cut you there again. No. I'd like you to, I would love to hear Mr. Abdullah to speak.
Sure.
You were going to talk about the challenges. I'll still come back to that and ask you there. You would continue them. So, Associate Professor Abdullah Altun, you're joining us from Gebze Technical University. The first question I'd like to ask you is the current trade volume between, Turkey and Africa. And I also like you to talk to us about how it has evolved and changed and developed over the past decade.
Thank you for having me, dear Mercy. The total trade volume in 2024 approximately is $33 billion between Turkey and Africa. The total trade volume is approximately $33 billion. Turkish imports from Africa is approximately $11.3 billion, and also Turkish exports to Africa approximately $21.5 billion. Actually, when we compare these with previous figures, trade nearly doubled since 2014. And growth is largely driven by North African countries, especially Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, and Libya. The share of sub-Saharan Africa is also rising, particularly with countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and main partners in our export, especially latest years. Egypt is more than $4 billion, Morocco approximately $3.5 billion, Algeria approximately $2.89 billion, and Libya $2.8 billion for Turkish exports. For imports as well, we see the same countries. Also, we will touch about the reasons why mainly these figures are related with North African countries. Egypt exports to Turkey approximately $4.4 billion, and Algeria, Morocco, and South Africa. South Africa here also rises as an important actor as well, more than $1.34 billion. Actually, Turkey aims to elevate its bilateral trade volume with Africa 50 billion US dollar by 2030s. This figures was 5.4 billion US dollars in 2003 at that years, and this seems that given the consistent upward trend in trade volumes and ongoing diplomatic efforts, these ambitious targets, I think, will be easily accessed in this decade, I think, by 2030. But there are some things should be quickly solved and improved for further development of trade.
Okay, all right there, Mr. Abdullah. Yes, I mean, I can hear, you know, the numbers, you keep mentioning the numbers, and I'm glad that you came with the numbers and, you know, the statistics for us to see clearly how, you know, over the past decade, I mean, this was not achieved in a day, it wasn't achieved in a year. We can see from these numbers, I think it is evident that, you know, these relations keep growing by the day, and it can only get better.
Of course, since, as I mentioned, in 2003, the trade volume just approximately 5 billion US dollar. Now we have more than 33 billion US dollar trade volume together. And each year, these numbers grow, even much significant acceleration. Of course, to access such a level, the efforts, bilateral efforts, have significant roles, especially Turkish diplomatic missions and even the students coming to Turkey from Africa, and also our business men, especially, and very intensely participating in even exhibitions or the various bilateral programs to develop bilateral ties between Africa and Turkey. But some point also important, we shouldn't ignore the roles of Turkish investment in Africa.
All right. Thank you there, Mr. Abdullah. Sorry for, you know, cutting you again. I'd like to also move to Mr. Burak. I want him to continue from where he left. He was talking about, you know, the challenges that we also face in, you know, we've been talking about how this has grown, but what are also the challenges that we face? That's over to you, Mr. Burak.
Yes, thank you so much again. Yes, we need to talk about the challenges that need to be addressed also. Not everything is okay in the relationship between the continent and Turkey. One of the important, maybe one of the most important issues is logistics and transportation between African countries and Turkey. While Turkey has strong maritime connections with North Africa, but trade routes to sub-Saharan Africa are still developing, still in progress. We need more direct shipping and airline routes. That will definitely help increase trade efficiency. Another challenge is the competition from global players, and you try to touch on that. Africa is attracting interests from major economies like China, European Union, and United States. But Turkey has unique advantage among those players. Because it focuses on mutual benefit and long-term partnership, not just business transaction. Unlike some other global players, like we counted, Turkey emphasizes not only mining and natural resources, but also local employment, technology transfer, skill development, making its presence more sustainable and impactful in the continent. Looking ahead, I can tell that the potential for the future growth is extensive. I think sectors like digital transformation, e-commerce, renewable energy are areas where Turkey and African nations can collaborate even more. As African economies continue to develop, I believe we will see even stronger economic ties between Turkey and Africa in coming years. I would like to mention that our president, Mr. Erdogan, has been one of the most active global leaders in engaging with the continent. In fact, President Erdogan has visited more African countries than any other non-African leader in the world. As you know, since 2005, Turkey declared the Year of Africa. Our president, Mr. Erdogan, has made more than 40 visits to nearly 30 African countries. So these visits have been crucial in building trust, signing trade agreements, promoting Turkey as a long-term partner in Africa's economic and social development as well. Let me also emphasize this. His approach is quite different from many other global players. Rather than a top-down aid model, Turkey emphasizes win-and-win cooperation. That means Turkey is not just investing in Africa, but also creating local employment, sharing expertise, and transferring technology. So those things will contribute definitely to for the welfare of the continent.
Definitely.
One of the most important milestones in Turkey-Africa relations was 2011 visit to Somalia. So that visit was very important from our president at a time when many world leaders avoided traveling to Somalia due to security concerns. Our president became the first non-African leader in the case to visit Mogadishu.
All right there, Mr. Burak. Thank you very much. I think that was also a very important point. You know, we could recall that, you know, President Erdogan was the one who stood between Somalia and Ethiopia most recently, bringing them together to, you know, come together and settle their differences. Now, thank you very much for that, Mr. Burak. So because of our time, I'd just like to hear from Mr. Abdullah too. I'd like you to continue where you stopped.
Actually, I want to continue with the investment dimension of Turkey and Africa relations. Actually, total Turkish outward investment, approximately 4% of Turkish outward investment is account for Africa. Directly targeted Africa, and interestingly, Turkish investment in Africa generate employment approximately 10 times more by the same investment amount compared to other destinations. For example, our 4%, the share of Africa in our outward investment is 4%, and by these Turkish investments generate approximately more than 25,000 employment in Africa. I think this is also a significant point to show that Turkey not only coming just benefit from much higher value-added part, but also try to contribute in many dimensions and also try to significantly add value. And also these investments also much focus on North Africa. However, approximately
Mr. Abdullah, sorry to cut you again. I'd like you to very quickly talk about, you know, you've talked about the different issues that also go on in all of this. I want you to talk about the most recent US tariffs that was imposed on major countries, which also affects African countries. So how do you think this would affect the trade relations between Turkey and Africa?
First, it's necessary to state that some countries, especially South Africa, also Lesotho, faced very significant tariff levels, you know. Especially Lesotho, with its garment industry, facing with 50% tariff in textile exports, may have impact on approximately more than 30,000 laborers. And in South Africa, especially citrus industry, faces approximately 31% tariffs imposed by US, and also this threats approximately more than 35,000 jobs in South Africa. And in Madagascar as well, they also has some difficulties in dealing with US tariffs as well. Meanwhile, in such difficult time, I believe that Turkey can offer a good market for the products of these countries, since the quality is also very clear, the quality of these countries' production. But more importantly and more broadly, we should couch the tariffs entirely for the African continent, since tariffs also make some trade relations between Africa and Turkey a bit difficult in some manners. Especially, you know, some free trade agreements or regional trade agreements are required to deal with tariff issues. And it seems that Turkey and North Africa together solved many issues and signed various trade agreements so far. Thus, this enable to such high volume of trade and also investment relations, since Turkey's investments mostly goes to North Africa, and especially in Algeria, Turkey has investment more than $2 billion.
All right,
and
associate.
So I think the last point, now African continental free trade area agreement can cover Turkey in some dimensions to increase Turkish bilateral relations with, especially with Sub-Saharan Africa as well.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you very much there, Associate Professor Abdullah Altun. You're joining us from Gebze Technical University, and Assistant Professor Burak Nedim Aktash, all the way from Beykoz University. I'm saying a very big thank you again to the both of you for joining us on the program today. I believe that these relations will continue, and we'll also have more time, you know, in the future to talk about the development between Turkey and Africa. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Can I say a couple words, last words?
Okay.
Because that is very important. Trade and investment are extremely important, but what truly strengthens the bond between countries is the cultural and educational exchange. So that is also very important.
Definitely. Thank you very much there, Assistant Professor Burak Nedim Aktash. Thank you for that last word. Now we'll be talking about the African Diaspora Forum, which is a forum aimed at bringing together Africans in the diaspora, that is, living in Turkey. And this month, the second edition is going to take place in Istanbul. Now, to talk about this program and how it came to be, I'll be speaking with Mr. Faroukou Mintoiba, who is the General Coordinator at Bizim Afrika. Hello, Mr. Faroukou.
Hello, Miss Mercy. Good day.
Good day to you too. Thank you very much for coming on the show and for accepting our invite.
It's my pleasure, and I would like to thank you as well, okay, and to the team for inviting me today. It's always a pleasure to find you here and talk about things that's related to Africa. So I'm really grateful, and I would like to thank you and to
thank you very much for that. Now let's start with the purpose of the ADF, the African Diaspora Forum. Yep. What is its purpose and what is the significance to, the African community at large?
Okay, the African Diaspora Forum, ADF, is actually a concept that has been taught and proposed by Bizim Afrika since its inception in 2022. Okay, we spent 1 year without actually having this idea, but after 1 year of officially starting our activities at Bizim Afrika, we realized that in Turkey there was a lot of gaps, particularly when it comes to how the Africans are interacting between each other here in Turkey. So in the framework of the concept or the program that we actually start doing, we thought that it would be good to propose a program or let's say a platform, okay, that gather annually young African leaders in Turkey to come together and discuss about their own issues and talk about their opportunities, okay, create opportunities for themselves. Because what we usually used to realize, particularly in Turkey, is that okay, although there is some brilliant mind, okay, Africans that are living in Turkey, most of the time you're gonna see that all the conferences or all the forums, okay, that were organized in the name of Africa was not actually organized by African, which is not something that is interesting to hear, right? So you're gonna see people or platforms, organizations organizing any kind of things that are related to Africa, and when you go there, you kind of realize that no, it's all some projects undertaken by people that are foreign to Africans. And we said this is not something that's perfect to our point of view, which is why we actually developed the African Diaspora Forum, which is, as I was saying, the kind of annual meeting of African leaders that are living across Turkey that comes together and talk about their own issues in Turkey and how they can create opportunities that ultimately lead them to effectively contributing in the development of the relation between Turkey and Africa.
Definitely. Thank you very much for that introduction. I think one thing I took from it is that you mentioned something that most programs that are organized are mostly by people who are not Africans. So it would make a lot of sense to have a program organized by Africans for Africans, even though as we would say, in a foreign country. Now, you've talked about the purpose of it and the significance to the African community. How often do you organize these types of events, or let's say the African Diaspora Forum itself? And okay. I would also like you to, sorry to cut you there, I would also like you to also talk about other events that you do organize.
Okay, thank you very much. As far as the African Diaspora Forum is concerned, it's going to be the second edition because, okay, Bizim Afrika itself is just 3 years old, and in the first year we didn't do like any forum of the kind, okay, but in the second year, which is in 2025, we had the idea of organizing, as I was saying, a forum where young people from, African countries come together and discuss about important things that are actually related to them. So last year we organized the first edition. It was in in February, okay, 2024. And even though it was the first edition, it was almost attended by Africans, okay, from all over Turkey. It's not just Istanbul, okay? So they came from different cities of Turkey, and they were from different African countries. It gathered almost 250, okay, participants who came together. And okay, since we saw that it was actually like that, we understood the need, okay, of actually sustaining such a project, which is why we kind of institutionalized this forum. And the idea of having the second edition was then motivated, okay, by the interest that it got from the first edition. Now, as I said, last year it was organized in February, but this year for some reasons we haven't been able to make it in February. And yeah, now that we got all set, okay, to have it, we hope that in the coming in the coming years, we'll be able to keep the path by making it, as I was saying, an annual programs that actually gather young Africans. And it's not, okay, one thing that we actually saying here is also that, okay, well, our focus or our main target are African professionals and students who are here. And I'm precising here that we're not only targeting either students or professionals, because we understand that all the Africans here are they are in diverse background. They might be students, they might be businessmen, they might be professionals. So like as a platform that actually intend to bring together all the component of the African diaspora, all the activities that we are doing is actually open, okay, to any kind of to any Africans, okay, regardless of which nationality they are coming from and which background they are actually coming from. And once I've said that, I also have to admit that, okay, although we are saying that our programs are actually intended to African in Turkey, there are sometimes people who show interest. For example, for the particular context of this second edition of the African Diaspora Forum, last time I saw an email from somebody, okay, who is supposed to be from Russia, and they are asking if they can attend the African Diaspora Forum. And of course, we are saying that if you are, as long as you are showing some interest in Africa, you are more than welcome. And last week when we had our weekly meeting, my colleagues reported that they got some, applications from Central Asian countries. And I was like, okay, so like it means that it's not only Africans and even Turkish persons. And particularly when we're talking about Turkey, we understand that there are Turkish who are sometimes much more Africans than some Africans themselves. Okay, which is why, okay, in those kind of programs, we also have people who are Turkish and attend to the program just because they are so curious about Africa and want to learn more. As a matter of fact, even in the stakeholders of the program, the people or the institution that are supporting the program, most of them are actually Turkish institutions, meaning that they are doing it because they kind of, want to prove that they are having some kind of interest in what
the program itself. So
doing.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Farouk. So what I'm getting from this is the program is open to a wide range of,
absolutely, yeah.
People. It's open to professionals, it's open to students, it's open to people interested in the African continent.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's talk about the plan and the lineup for the program. What should participants expect during this program? What should they hope to see? I mean, I've seen, different panels set already for the program, but what would you say participants should expect?
Okay, so now there is a few things we need to understand about the structure or the content of the forum. For sure, yeah. Generally speaking, when we're talking about the forum, people, of course, naturally, okay, expect to come across panels, which is, of course, what's going to be encountered in our forum, except that, well, just beyond forums, we also plan some workshops. So like if I'm to talk about the forum, the panels, we have 3 panels, and okay, the first panel is going to be regarding the African diaspora in Turkey, talking about how to protect the African identity, like the identity of being African, and how Africans in Turkey actually strive to contribute and integrate to the Turkish community. So that's what the first panel is going to be about. The second panel will be about economic empowerment and strengthening business opportunities. So here you're going to have some experts, either Africans or Turkish people who are in the field of business, okay, either between Turkey and Africa or in some other environment that actually have some expertise on how we can work, okay, to make sure that we are creating opportunities for Africans so that they can actively engage, okay, particularly in the business aspect side, okay, on how to make some business between Turkey and Africa or between their respective countries and Turkey. Now the last program will be about advocacy and cultural diplomacy. So we want people here, there are some experts and professionals, okay, to tell us on, to tell people on how we can change, okay, the narrative of, Africans in Turkey. One thing that you probably encountered is, it's a bit funny, but yeah, that is the reality. When you're going around some street in Istanbul or in Ankara, or doesn't matter, every time that you're talking about Africans, they will usually think that, you're talking about those people who are selling the watch and whatever things they are doing in Aksaray here in Istanbul or any other places. And yet we want to show them that no, Africans in Turkey are not only those people who are selling the watch or doing cargo. Of course, it's not something that's bad, okay? But beyond that, we have some successful, okay, Africans who have attained a certain level in Turkey, to the extent that they can be seen as an example of success, okay, to their young brothers and sisters. So we are calling those people, okay, into the panel so that they come and bring up on their experiences, because you never know what you're gonna hear that can inspire you to create something new. So we want to make sure that we are supporting those people, okay, by inviting them to talk about their way, how how have they made it, okay, to this level. So we want those persons to come and share their experience and serve as motivations, okay, to the person that will be attending the program, which is why, okay, now I'm terminating with this. Alongside with the forum, we'll be having, as well as I said, the workshops, okay, because as I said, the standard format of a forum is just having some panels, but since most of the time it's always boring, we thought that having 3 panels and then complementing it with workshops are gonna be good. And the subject of the workshops are actually kind of interesting, because it might be a kind of it got from the panel that we haven't. So the first workshop will be about training or giving practical practical knowledge, okay, to participants on how to build a business, okay, or start an entrepreneurship idea in Turkey. The second one is on how to start an organization or a platform in Turkey, for example, because we know that there are some brilliant people who always like to take some initiative. So we want some expert, okay, to come and give them some ways on how to do it since they are in Turkey. And the last one is on advocacy, how to be a media influencer, for example, because you've probably seen that recently in Turkey, the number of media influencers have grown, and people probably have some interest about that. So we actually design those 3 workshops so that participants can choose any of the terms that actually fit with their interests. And then, of course, we'll be having some high-level participants, some diplomats, some consulates, and some ambassadors who will be coming to the program. This actually offer a kind of invaluable opportunity for networking.
Mr. Farouk, sorry to cut you there. Thank you very much. Because of our time, I just, like us to wrap it up here. You've talked about the different panels and then the workshops that are going to take place. And I do hope that this is a very great, event that inspires people, as you've also talked about, people taking up the initiative and being advocates in their different communities. So thank you very much for coming on the show to talk to us about the African Diaspora Forum. And we do appreciate your time and the knowledge you've shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I would like to thank you again for having me here. It was such a great opportunity. And as I said, I hope to see you in the program, inshallah, in Istanbul, in 2 weeks' time.
Yes, definitely, we'll be there. Thank you. With that, we've come to the end of today's program on Through Africa. We've talked about the trade relations between Turkey and Africa, and we've also talked about the upcoming African Diaspora Forum, which is an event organized for Africans in the diaspora. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. It is still me, your host, Merci Bamgola, and stay safe and goodbye.